Cyberpunk 2077's comeback owes a lot to Edgerunners. Thanks to Netflix's Cyberpunk, Edgerunners series, CD Projekt Red's infamous Cyberpunk 2077 is seeing a huge resurgence among fans of the franchise. It's fair to say that CD Projekt Red has struck gold in its collaboration with Studio Trigger to produce one of the best anime so far this year. Still maintaining that same gritty and mature cyberpunk feeling, the locations in Night City have been brought to life with almost a one-to-one resemblance to certain areas in Cyberpunk 2077. The show has been regarded as a major success by fans of the cyberpunk world setting and anime fans alike, with its colorful violence, well-written characters, and entertaining storylines. The show has been so successful, in fact, that it may have had an unforeseen effect on Cyberpunk 2077 itself. In an unforeseen but welcome surprise for many, CD Projekt Red's Cyberpunk 2077 has been experiencing a resurgence in popularity over the past couple of weeks. The developer recently reported that a staggering 20 million copies of Cyberpunk 2077 have been sold since launch, along with its player count up nearly 300% recently. Such impressive numbers come from a variety of reasons, but for the most part, the game owes its comeback to the Netflix series Cyberpunk, Edgerunners. Cyberpunk, Edgerunners was announced in 2020, and while it was viewed as an exciting prospect, no one could have predicted just how influential the anime would become. Similar to how Netflix's The Witcher found new fans to join Geralt on his in-game adventures, or how Arcane introduced many to League of Legends characters, Cyberpunk, Edgerunners has spurred the revival that Cyberpunk 2077 desperately needed. Since the release of Cyberpunk, Edgerunners, Cyberpunk 2077 has seen a huge spike in active players, with the player sentiment seeming to shift from overwhelmingly negative to more positive or mixed reviews almost overnight. Is it enough to say the game after its initial rocky release? There are many factors at play that are in need of review before a short conclusion on the matter can be formed, and this article will do exactly that. Cyberpunk 2077's extremely disappointing launch. Unfortunately, after a long 9-year wait for the game's release, many Cyberpunk 2077 players had a difficult time roaming the streets of Night City on their first playthrough. It quickly became apparent that the game was home to a treasure trove of bugs and glitches. While some didn't mind the glitches in Cyberpunk 2077, they found that the storyline was lacking in heart. Others reported that the game was crashing their drivers and causing their GPU fans to work overtime. By the end of 2020, most reviews had already written off the open-world RPG as one of the biggest gaming flops of the decade, with the disappointing games that followed being labeled as the Cyberpunk 2077 of the year. As expected, bad reviews deterred plenty from trying the game, and it seemed, despite a lot of patches, that Cyberpunk 2077 would be mostly forgotten. Gamers have a renewed interest in Cyberpunk 2077. A renewed interest in the world setting of Cyberpunk has been sparked by fans of Edgerunners who are likely trying Cyberpunk 2077 out for the first time. With the sudden popularity of the setting, it's fair to say that we'll see a sharp increase in non-game-related cyberpunk media for quite a while. The fan-favorite tales of V, Lucy, and David demonstrate that the franchise has a bright future, from potential shows to graphic novels to other forms of entertainment. The world is expansive, deep, and detailed, and is a great basis for many future stories set in Night City and the areas surrounding it. Cyberpunk 2077 finally finds its footing. Nearly 2 years after its release, CD Projekt Red is finally finding its footing after the overwhelming success of its crossover anime series, Cyberpunk, Edgerunners. While the developers were already listening to player feedback, patching issues, and making great improvements to the game, it's probably more due to the interest in the series that Cyberpunk 2077 is getting a sequel. The anime takes place before the events of the game, which makes sense as there are several locations that players can visit, such as apartments, that once belonged to characters in the show but are now inhabited by others. Many are playing the game to find references to David Martinez, Lucy, or other links to Cyberpunk, Edgerunners, while also interested in learning more about the dystopian universe. Seeing as the anime is only one season with 10 episodes and has not been confirmed for a second season, the game is serving as a refuge for those that want to continue exploring Night City. Of course, Cyberpunk 2077 couldn't have stood on its own without the necessary patches that have been added over the years, just as a show set in the same universe is not enough to fix pre-existing issues. September introduced the game's Edgerunners update, also called Update 1.6, which included items and connections to the show, while also improving overall gameplay. The freedom that the game gives its users is one of the main reasons people are sticking around, as they are able to copy David Sandovist and Arasaka build and recreate other tactics from the show, while also having the chance to create something entirely new. Perhaps the praise that Cyberpunk 2077 is receiving as of late will convince CD Projekt Red to continue pouring time and attention into the game before starting on the sequel.